Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is L3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mango of South Florida, and today's date is Friday, December 14th, 2018. So let us begin. Alright, I just try to do this a little bit something different, but that's okay. And thanks for tuning in. Yep, it's early Friday morning. You may hear the train behind me. I'm along the new river of the city of Fort Lauderdale. Nice and mild tonight. I like it. Very pleasant. Not even sweating. And yes, tomorrow will be the 227th birthday of our U.S. Bill of Rights. Which on that day in history, in the year 1791, Virginia was the last state to ratify the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, which means government keep out. So when you hear some federal elected hack say, I support free speech, or I support the right to bear arms, but anything else, I'm pro Bill of Rights, but you get that penile microphone ready to go. Of course, they're going to be lying to their teeth, and you can go, my penile microphone, my penis is in your mouth, you're mumbling, and don't worry, it's not sexual harassment. Absolutely. That's how I see it with these federal hacks out there that claim to be, I support the Constitution, but they're just saying, I bend over for the big major corporations or the lobbyist groups, whether they're foreign or domestic. That's right. So, on that day, everyone in the United States of America should give the middle finger to tyrannical government bobbleheads. Government keep out. Give them the big two birds. Okay? Don't worry, I'm going to be doing the same thing. Hopefully I meet these clowns on this day. I just give them a great laugh. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm a congressman. Laugh at them. Because they hate freedom. Why treat them with respect? I may be doing a show on that. I was going to see what I can find. It's just pending to be announced. However, I'm going to be addressing a few things here. I'm going to say what the hell. And this one here came out yesterday. That's the afternoon. It's from consortiumnews.com. Yes, Virginia, there is a deep state, and Rob Parry exposed it. Rob Parry, investigative and journalist who passed away recently. May his soul be forever free. And they are doing a donation drive, so please support them. I will put all the links, the footnotes on there, so you could take the opportunity to send them money. As it reads here, in this effort to uncover the Iran-Contra plot and the machinations surrounding Russiagate, Rob Parry was in the forefront of journalists exposing the inner workings of the deep state, recalls Ray McGovern during our Winter Fund drive. But here's what he has to say. A year ago yesterday, it became fully aware what was behind the feverish attempt by our intelligence agencies and their mainstream media accomplices to emasculate President Donald Trump with the Russiagate trope. It turned out that the objective was not only to legitimize Trump and make it impossible for him to move toward a more decent relationship with Russia. On December 12, 2017, it became manifestly clear that it was not only the usual suspects. The military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academia think tank complex, namely the Boeings, Lockheeds, the Raytheons, profiteering on high tension with Russia. Not only were greedy members of Congress upon whom defense contractors lavished some of their profits, not only the TV corporations controlled by the same contractors, and not only the Democrats desperately searching for a way to explain how Hillary Clinton could have lost to the buffoon we have in the White House. No, it was deeper than that. It turns out a huge part of the motivation behind Russiagate was to hide how the Department of Justice, FBI, CIA affectionately known as the Deep State, with their co-op assets in the media, interfered in the 2016 election in a gross attempt to make sure that Trump did not win. Russiagate, Kio Bono, in Latin means who benefits. This would become crystal clear even to Cub reporters when the text exchanges between senior FBI officials Peter Strzok and girlfriend Lisa Page exactly a year ago. Typically, of the readers of the New York Times, the following day would altogether miss the importance of the text exchanges. Readers of Robert Parry's article on December 13, 2017, the foundering Russiagate scandal would be gently lead to understand the importance of this critical extra dimension, explaining the media, anonymous intelligence sources' frenzied effort to push the prevailing Russiagate narrative and how captivated and unprofessional the mainstream media had become. Rod Parry did not call me frequently to compare notes. Excuse me. But he did call on December 12, 2017 for a sanity check on the release of the Strzok Page text. Hopefully I pronounced his name. Strzok. Strokes. Or Strzok. Other strokes. Okay. FBI agent Peter Strzok interviewed Hillary Clinton on her servers and led that investigation. He was handpicked FBI agent who took part in the January 2017 lightweight intelligence assessment that blamed Russia for the 2016 election result. And he was on the special counsel Robert Mueller's staff investigating alleged Russian interference. Bob and I agree on the text's significance, and I was tempted to volunteer a draft to appear the next day. But it was clear that Bob wanted to take the lead and what turned out to be the last substantive piece. He had already laid groundwork with 3 articles earlier that month. All 3 are worth reading again. There are the links. Please, folks, read it. It's very good stuff. Here's how Bob began his article on the Strzok Page bombshell, not a fragment of it seemed to impact mainstream media. The disclosure of fearlessly anti-Trump text messages between 2 romantically involved senior FBI officials who play key roles in the early Russiagate inquiry has turned the supposed Russian election meddling scandal into its own scandal by providing evidence that some government investigators saw it as their duty to block or destroy Donald Trump's presidency. As much as the U.S. mainstream media has mocked the idea that an American deep state exists and that it has maneuvered to remove Trump from office, the text messages between senior FBI counterintelligence officials Peter Strzok and senior FBI lawyer Lisa Page reveal how the 2 ranking members of the government's intelligence legal bureaucracy saw their role as protecting the United States from an election that might elevate to the presidency someone as unfit as Trump. Parry's Courier. Fast forwarding just 2 weeks, Bob had a stroke on Christmas Eve, which seriously affected his eyesight. By New Year's Eve 2017, he was able to apologize to Bob. Typical Bob to Conservative News readers for not filing for 2 weeks. In January, he had additional strokes, which I visited him in the hospital. He was not himself. What is indelible in my memory, though, that the way he kept repeating from his hospital bed is too much, is just too much, too much. What was too much? Since Bob told me how hard he had to struggle with impaired vision to put together his December 31st piece, and since what he wrote throws such light on Bob and the prostitution of the profession he loved so much, I include a few excerpts below. Forgive me, but I cannot, for the life of me pare them down further. These paragraphs from Bob are requiring reading for those who want to have some clue as to what has been going on in Washington and the Faustian bargain struck between the media and the deep state. Here's what Bob's clear eye, despite fuzzy eyesight, wrote. On Christmas Eve, I suffered a stroke that has affected my eyesight, especially my reading and thus my writing, although apparently not much else. The doctor has also been working to figure out exactly what happened, since I never had high blood pressure. I never smoked, and my recent physical found nothing out of the ordinary. Perhaps my personal slogan that every day's a work day had to do something with this. Perhaps the unrelenting ugliness that has become official Washington and national journalism was a factor. It seems that since I arrived in Washington in 1977 as a correspondent for the Associated Press, the nastiest of American democracy and journalism has gone from bad to worse. More and more, I would encounter policymakers, activists, and yes, journalists who care less about a careful evaluation of the facts and logic and more about achieving a preordained geopolitical result. And this loss of objective standards reached deeply into the most prestigious halls of American media. This perversion of principles, twisting information to fit a desired conclusion, became the modus vivendi of American politics and journalism, and all those who insisted on defending the journalistic principles of skepticism and even handiness were increasingly shunned by our colleagues. Everything became information warfare. The demonization of Russian President Vladimir Putin in Russia is the most dangerous feature of this propaganda process. And this is where the neocons and liberal interventionists most significantly come together. The U.S. media's approach to Russia is now virtually 100% propaganda. Does any sentiment human being read the New York Times or the Washington Post coverage of Russia's and think that he or she is getting a neutral or unbiased treatment of the facts? The American people and the West in general are carefully shielded from hearing the other side of the story. Indeed, to even suggest that there is another side to the story makes you a Putin apologist or Kremlin stooge. Western journalists now apparently see this as their patriotic duty to hide key facts that otherwise would undermine the demonizing of Putin in Russia. Ironically, many liberals who cut their teeth on skepticism about the Cold War and the bogus justifications for the Vietnam War now insist that we must all accept whatever the U.S. intelligence community feeds us, even if we're told to accept the assertions on faith. The hatred of Trump and Putin was so intense, the old-fashioned rules of journalism and fairness were brushed aside. On a personal note, I face harsh criticism, even from friends, for many years for refusing to enlist in the anti-Trump resistance, which is nothing more than a synthetic movement funded by assholes, excuse my language, like the Clinton Foundation. I'm sorry. All I see is a synthetic movement of the resistance, not resisting enough. And I hate to use this language, folks, but sometimes I hate being insulted. You're talking to a person that's not a Trump worshiper, okay? So don't even go there. The argument was that Trump was such a unique threat to America and the world that I should join in finding any justification from his ouster. Some people saw my insistence on the same journalistic standards that I had always employed somehow a betrayal. Other people, including senior editors across the mainstream media, began to treat the unproven Russiagate allegations as flat fact. God bless Bizarro, right? No skepticism was tolerated, and mentioning the obvious bias among the never-Trumpers inside the FBI, Justice Department, and intelligence community was decried as an attack on the integrity of the U.S. government's institutions. Anti-Trump progressives were postured as true patriots because their now unquestioned acceptance of evidence-free proclamations of the U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies. Hatred of Trump had become like some invasion of the body snatchers. Perhaps many of my journalistic colleagues have never believed in the principles of journalism that I had embraced throughout my adult life. To me, journalism wasn't just covered for political activism. It was a commitment to the American people and the world to tell important news stories as fully and fairly as I could. Not to slant the facts to get some bad political leader or guide the public in some desired direction. Robert Parry, who exposed the deep state skullduggery in the Iran-Contra affair, died on January 27, 2018. Our corrupt media, though, live on in infamy. Strokes and pancreatic cancer were the cause. But I think Bob was also a casualty of the stress caused by the Faustian media, deep state bargain. It was just too much. I can back that up. And you're talking to a person that's never been a Trump lover by any means. I don't fall for the cult of personality. Never believe the hype, regardless. But I never bought the story of the Russian collusion. Blaming Putin, Russian intelligence for the election. Please. Look what the clown they were endorsing. Hillary Clinton is self-explanatory. If you knew what she stood for, seeing her voting record, and even as Secretary of State, she hated freedom, period. She believed government knows best. And I'm not trying to defend Trump by any means. But that's their alibi. The Russiagate. The greatest deception for a long time. Not as big as 9/11, okay? I will say that. But it was the most meek and unmeritable claim I've heard in a long time. And they're trying to beat a dead horse to convince everyone they were involved with the election on putting Donald J. Trump in as president. No. Hillary Clinton done this to herself. And all those media, garbage media, military industrial complex, those deep state toadies are just as liable. A lot of folks out there, I know, never bought it at all. And Rob Parry did what he believed was right. And always give him homage for that. May his soul be forever free and his legacy live on. So please, folks, donate to consortiumnews.com for their winter drive. We need mavericks out there, not a bunch of higher paid stooges that will spread their legs or pull down their pants to get a promotion. This is what war on the press is all about. They don't want individual sites like this in existence. They want to use us as cattle, be part of the technocratic, tyrannical plantation. Worldwide, to be exact. So, prove them wrong if you dare, folks. That's all I gotta say about this. But you give a toast, a homage to Mr. Robert Parry and the folks from consortiumnews.com, and includes Ray McGovern. Great articles, they go on and on and on. They've been doing it since 1995. All right, well, if I'm correct, this came out on the 12th. And I have to thank one of my colleagues on my Facebook page, I believe he's from Pakistan, Raza. Yeah, hello, Raza. A big shout out to you, my friend. Hopefully you've been checking out my show. Thinking about you. If things are going well in your homeland and hometown. It's about human trafficking. Came out the 12th of this year. It says here, child sex slavery ring run by former Israeli soldier. Dismantled by Colombian police. The girls were forced to be part of a WhatsApp group called Parry, an apparent reference to the Jewish holiday, where they were pressured and intimidated, as well as summoned to areas frequented by Israeli tourists. This is what they have to say. It's happening around Medellin, Colombia. A large child sex slavery ring overseen by Israelis was dismantled by Colombian police earlier this week in a story that has shocked Colombia and much of Latin America, but received minimal coverage from mainstream Western media outlets. The network has been active since 2011 and expressly recruited young underage females in situations of economic hardship or domestic abuse to work as sex slaves, catering to Israeli tourists visiting Colombia. Colombian authorities first began to investigate the sex slavery network in June 2016 following the murder of Israeli citizen Shay Azran in Colombian city of Medellin. Soon after Azran's murder was found to be another Israeli, Asi Ben Mush, an ex-IDF soldier who was known for his past involvement in both drug and human trafficking in the early 2000s. However, Mush was never arrested for Azran's murder. As authorities delved deeper into Mush's current activities while investigating the homicide, they determined that he was the owner of a hostel in Cartagena, Colombia, and that he was also one of the coordinators of tourism packages sold exclusively to Israeli men visiting Colombia. According to judicial sources cited by El Colombiano, the tourist packages sold by Mush and his cohorts involved in taking Israeli men, most of them businessmen or men who recently ended their compulsory military service in the IDF, to parties at a variety of locales such as hostels, hotels, farms, and yachts, where the main attraction was the sexual exploitation of underage women and the mass consumption of narcotics and alcohol. The sites where the exploitation occurred offered lodging or services exclusively to Israeli tourists, a practice that is surprisingly common in frequent tourist destinations throughout South America. Mush was expelled from Colombia in November of last year after a massive sex party was broken up by police and illicit drugs were found at the scene. By the time, authorities had already determined the existence of the network and his accomplices. Ben Mush. Okay, that's how you pronounce it. Mush. I say mush, but Mush. There's a photo, Israeli photo in here as well. You should folks can check it out. Interesting. We'll continue on here. As a result of the multi-year investigation, 14 Israeli citizens were determined to comprise the network along with 2 Colombians, one of whom was a police officer. Yet while 16 arrest warrants have been issued, only 7 arrests have been made, 5 of which were Israeli and the remaining 2 Colombian. The network was found to extend through several Colombian cities, Santa Marta, Medellin, and Cartagena, and was initially difficult to detect as those running the network hid their real activities behind legitimate commercial establishments such as hotels and spas. Colombian police characterized the network as specifically seeking out vulnerable Colombian female minors in area schools, especially those in the difficult economic situation or living in homes where domestic abuse was common and luring them into sex work. The underage girls were said to receive between 200,000 and 400,000 Colombian pesos, $63 or $126, for each encounter with Israeli men traveling aboard. In addition, the girls were forced to be part of a WhatsApp group called Purim, an apparent reference to the Jewish holiday, where they were pressured and intimidated as well as summoned to areas frequented by Israeli tourists, offshoring the business. Colombian police noted that the movements and other activities of the Israeli involved in the network suggested that group was not active, not just within Colombia, but throughout Latin America, meaning that the presence of Israeli-run sex trafficking rings in other Latin American countries is a distinct possibility. The network is only the most recent child prostitution ring run by foreigners that have been dismantled by Colombian police. Earlier this year in October, American Michael Edward Finale was arrested for his role in a sex trafficking operation located in the city of Cartagena. Finale's network was also several other American cities, as well as citizens of German and Argentinian nationality. However, even as the Israeli government itself notes, Israel has recently been the site of a severe phenomenon of human trafficking for prostitution, as thousands of women have been imported to Israel from developing countries and forced into prostitution by criminal groups. Israeli police have estimated that at the height of such operations in 2003, 3,000 women were trafficked in a single year, mostly taken from Eastern Europe and smuggled into Israel through Egypt. Notably, sex trafficking in Israel is said to have declined conspicuously in the years 2010 and 2011, just as now the dismantled child prostitution ring was being set up in Colombia by Moosh. Given that Colombian authorities have suggested that other such Israel-run networks are active throughout South America, it seems that the crackdown on human trafficking in Israel had led Israeli criminals to take their illicit activities abroad and use guise of tourism to take their clientele with them. Interesting there. So, Whitney Webb did a lot here. Yeah, so very interesting indeed, right? When you see these things. And just another example, my friends. How come the Western media is not talking about this? If we criticize that the Israelis are involved, certain criminals that are Israelis involved in sex trafficking, you would be called anti-Semitic. Absolutely not. I know people in Israel, the beautiful people who live there, condemn this crap. Unacceptable. So, I'm just wondering, is he part of Mossad? We don't know. Anything's possible. They like getting allegedly like get involved in all this as well. Why is it? Very intriguing and disturbing indeed. But you can see his mugshot there. December 31st, 1973. Wow. So, folks, something to think about. It has to be addressed. Human trafficking, regardless where they're from, is null and void. Condemn it. Shut these bastards down. Period. I'm not being anti-Semitic either. Don't give me that garbage. Alright, I'm going to do one more here, folks. Came out on the 12th. Mises Wire. I think this one came out. Yeah, it came out on the 12th by Claudio Gross. It was originally from his website, claudiogross.ch. That's okay. This is what they have to say on what is happening. One more time here. Alright. It says here, Italy brewing a storm within the EU. Global economy, of course. Over the last couple of years, the main challenge of the EU cohesion has been Brexit, with the media sharply focused on the negotiations and all relevant developments. Since the release of the draft withdrawal agreement, largely perceived as a victory for the EU, those who support the European project and believe in a strong leadership from Brussels have projected confidence and optimism for the future. According to these voices, the divisions caused by the rise of nationalism and populism in the past years are healing. The relationship between members of states is normalizing, while a future of stability, harmony awaits. All right, continue on here. I got like fun. Someone's having fun out here. All right, as I continue on, my friend. However, such a vision might prove naive, as the discounts at a greater risk to the EU than Brexit ever was. The political and economic powder keg that is Italy. The budget fight over 3 months. Italy's 2019 budget plans and the resulting friction with Brussels have been making headlines and bringing to the surface numerous concerns over the country's economic stability. In the relationship with the EU, the Italian government, aiming to honor its heavily populist pre-election promises, has presented a budget that is sharply at odds with the plans and goals of the EU officials. Held by the Italian coalition government as a budget that will end poverty, the plan includes, among various other spending programs and tax cuts, a lower retirement age, a state-guaranteed basic income of €780. In order to finance its ambitious spending spree, the new Italian government plans to increase the budget deficit to 2.4% of GDP, a number that EU officials found very difficult to reconcile with, especially since previous government's plans only required a 0.8% deficit. Given Italy's extreme national debt levels, Eurozone officials saw a clear threat of future instability in the new government's plan that could easily spread throughout the bloc. In October, the tension culminated in an unprecedented move by the EU Commission. Italy's draft budget was rejected and revisions were mandated. Italy defiantly announced it would stick to its plan in response to the Commission that said that significant fines and sanctions against the country were warranted. Woo! That sounds like an act of war, my friends. What do you think? The fines that the Commission threatened could amount to 0.5% of Italy's GDP, whose additional disciplinary measures could include a freeze on development funds. At this stage, a last-minute compromise solution could be hammered out in order to avoid sanctions. However, the entire incident was heavily bruised the already strained relationship between Italy and the EU, a history of friction. While the rejection of the Italian budget by the Commission was seen by many as an unusually aggressive step, it is useful to remember that this was not the first time the new coalition government has been strong-armed by Brussels into towing the line. In June, when the new government was still in negotiations to fill its key post, Paolo Sanova emerged as the first choice for the finance minister, a professor of economics with experience at the Bank of Italy. Savona was similarly railroaded by the pressure from the EU, as his positions were hardly in line with the European project, and even less so with common currency, which he described as a German cage. The nascent government quickly conceded and instead made him Minister of European Affairs, placing much less controversial candidate as finance minister. However, it is important to note that the two parties as the Italian government consist of together won over 50% of the vote in this year's election. The most outspoken member of the government, Matteo Salvini, leader of the Lega Party, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Interior, has repeatedly expressed his opposition to the euro when he called a crime against humanity and to EU overreach he has only last month that people like Juncker and Moscovici have ruined Europe and our country. Going a step further and moving for a mere discontent with the status quo to actionable plans, the coalition are made clear that the EU pushed them too far and attempt to micromanage their policies. They will not follow the surrender paradigm of Greece, even that it means turmoil in the markets. Instead, they will drop the euro and adopt a parallel currency, a move known as Plan B. Interesting. I like this. I will proceed. A ticking time bomb. Italy is the third largest economy in the Eurozone, but it carries the second largest debt to GDP, only surpassed by Greece. At 131% of its entire economic output, Italy's debt stands at over 2.3 trillion euros. The country last year spent 3.7 of its GDP just on interest payments, a figure that is projected to rise to 3.9% by 2020. And it tells you the interest expenditure of public debt are high for Italy. And below that is Greece, Portugal, Hungary, UK, Spain, Croatia, and all the way down to Sweden. It's from the European Commission from autumn 2018. Folks, check it out. Very interesting here. To make matters worse, economic growth has also essentially flatlined. The government's projections foresee 1.5% growth for 2019, a sharp contrast with Morgan Stanley's latest forecast of just 0.5%. These figures might sound dismal, but they are consistent with Italy's growth record in recent years. Since 2008, the country has gone through a triple-dip recession from which it has yet to recover. Today's GDP per capita inflation adjusted is lower than in 2000. Furthermore, the country is facing severe demographic problems that is bound to exacerbate its debt crisis. A report by Italy's National Institute of Statistics revealed that the country's birth rate once again declined in 2017. This persistent downward trend of recent raises significant concerns as, after Japan, Italy is the second oldest country in terms of elderly people as a ratio of the total population. Also, Italian banks are still at a major weak link. Overall, European banks have amassed about 944 billion euros in bad and non-performing loans that clog up their balance sheets. Italian banks are at the top of the list, holding the lion's share of this bad debt with 224.2 billion euros, which is $255.9 billion US dollars, weighing down the country's banking sector. Is this thus clear that apart from the political friction and the rift with the EU, Italy's problems are multifaceted, compounded over decades, and run very deep, posing a real systematic risk not just to the country itself, but also the entire bloc. Anemic growth and an ailing banking sector, skyrocketing national debt, unfavorable demographic trends, and increasing financing costs form a toxic combination that can seriously destabilize the Eurozone. What happened was you got the bigger government, the European Union, trying to tell all the other countries how to wipe their rear ends and shine their shoes. And furthermore, and beyond, it's going to backfire. This is what's happening in Italy right now. Like what happened in Greece and all the other countries, including in the UK, which that's what they don't do with the Brexit. Now they want to try to no, don't go. That mindset. And then they say Theresa May is part of that problem, supposedly, with this bogus compromising. Look it up, folks. You'd be very like, wow. Club of Rome at its finest, right? Too big, too safe. Last time Italy found itself near bankruptcy, it was saved by the ECB's decision to launch into a decade of money printing, heavy intervention, and massive government bond purchases. Can we say fiat, money, print out of thin air? Let's play with monopoly money, right? However, the ECB is now set to stop a reverse that measures and that facilitates this favorable environment that supported the entire European economy after the last recession. This might prove catastrophic for Italy. Rising interest rates will make the debt near impossible to service without impacting major spending programs and government services. Without external, systemic, and extensive support, the country is bound to struggle heavily over the next years. Unlike Italy or Greece, Italy will be far greater challenge to bail out, and the failure to do so will have far grimmer implications. While the economic problem has a slow-burning fuse and will inevitably lead to a serious crisis eventually, it is political troubles that might actually speed up that process. The recent tensions have drawn attention to the capacity that Brussels actually has in interfering with national policies and member state affairs. It has also served too many as evidence of how far is willing to go to exercise these powers should be a member state refuse to toe the line. Top of this, issues such as increasingly wide divide with the EU over migration have also heightened the public discontent. The real on-the-ground implications of the multifaceted challenges that burden Italy have taken a toll on the average citizen's life and is strongly reflected in their views and outlook on the future. According to a study released in August by Ipsos and the More in Common initiative, only 60% of Italians believe that globalization had a positive impact on the economy, while 73% say that traditional parties and politicians don't care about people like them. As more and more voters are attracted to the extremes of the political spectrum, the rift between the left and right keeps growing. It might not be yet clear exactly what kind of move by the EU the Italian government would interpret as a step too far and cause them to make good on their warning to launch their Plan B. However, what we can tell for sure is that our European project, the common currency, and the Brussels bureaucracy will definitely not be able to sustain the blow of another exit, especially if it's Italy that has decided to leave. That being said, it should also be obvious that the systemic problems that existed since 2000, they have not disappeared. On the contrary, they just became worse. Although we can't predict the future, we can certainly prepare for it. Therefore, I would like to close with a quote from Professor Dr. Anthony C. Sutton, who once said, "Those entrapped by the herd instinct are drowned in the deluge of history. But there are always a few who observe reason and take precautions, and thus escape the flood. For these few, gold has been asset of last resort." Interesting indeed. They're telling the brothers this is an Italy one thing. Have hard assets handy. You gotta give Claudio Grass credit on this. Real good article. This is what part of the Central Bank, One World Order, European Union Club of Rome is all about. Bring them into the technocratic, tyrannical plantation. Worldwide, my friends. Yes. This is going on worldwide. What you see in France, going to Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, and I expect this with Italy as well. Coming soon. Blowback. When government knows best, it's turned to crap. Even from the European Union Parliament. The truth hurts, my friends. I can see every nation in Europe give Brussels the big middle fingers. Because you know why? They need them. The EU needs them more. Those European countries need the EU. Plain and simple. That's all I gotta say. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us on social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, When we send something that's interesting, man, I want to check out, whatever you do, please address the correspondence with decorum. I will give you all my footnotes for this episode, including social media contacts and email addresses on the same page from Spreaker. Okay? Once again, thank you for your time. But always remember that the demoniac resistance, health for the soul, and killing liberty, humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.